Welcome back to the Flagship studio at the JP Morgan Health Conference here in San Francisco. In the studio, we have David Berry from Valo. David, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
I was able to hear your conversation yesterday at the conference, and you talked a lot about vast amounts of human data that you have at Valo and how it's being deployed for drug development, and particularly speed. Can you talk to us a bit about, first of all, about just the data that you've accumulated?
Sure, absolutely. The data that's become available over the last couple of years, I think has put us at a transformational point. So as the way we like to think about drug discovery and development, there's been a progressive evolution where we've moved to digital targets and then to fully integrated engineering systems such as Moderna. But there's been an opportunity where for the first time we can take the siloed architecture that exists in pharma, the siloed data, the siloed operations, and use data to create an integrated operational schema. And we think that's really important because it allows us to unify the entirety of the framework and do it in ways where there isn't loss of information, there aren't throw-it-over-the-wall silos, and we think that gives us an opportunity to make better drugs for patients faster, which is really our mission. But behind this, we have about 10 million patients of longitudinal data, and it's unique data.
10 million.
10 million. And that's because it really gives us insight into a large number of lives over 20 years with less than a 2% missingness rate, and it's got a depth to it. We've been able to couple that together with hundreds of thousands of ohms that we've been prosecuting, and that allows us to get a real insight into how we can simulate disease.
You talked yesterday about the Opal Platform. Is that what you're now describing, or how does Opal work exactly?
So the Opal computational platform is the underlying capability that we've been building for the last 3+ years. Now, data is a key enabler to it, but data in its own right is insufficient. And what we've been doing is using that data to build 28,000 plus machine learning models that span the entirety of the drug discovery and development continuum, all in this unified framework. That's really what we've been focused on in the build of Opal.
A lot of talk at JPM this week around partnerships. How has that been part of Valo's strategy?
Well, one of the things that we're really excited about is the capabilities of Opal are something that span the entirety of drug discovery and development. Now, last year, we launched a product offering called Logica. We did this in collaboration with Charles River Labs. And what it is a turnkey solution for small molecule drug design. That is, you give us a target, we give you a drug candidate in half the time, half the cost, using a risk-sharing model. And we've been pushing this into the market, so what we're really excited about is our opportunity to work with many, not just pharma companies, but also small companies, to help them enable their drug development, drug discovery efforts. And so this is the first, if you will, avenue of partnering, and we're excited that we'll be able to leverage this platform to be able to do more.
Got it. And for those more interested in Logica, there was a conversation here in the studio this morning that you can find on our JPM page on the Flagship website. I'm going to ask you about culture. How many employees at Valo?
About 160.
And how have you thought about culture? You come out of Flagship, you sort of that idea of being far from shore that Nubar wrote about in his letter is something that's ingrained in your training as a scientist entrepreneur. How have you thought about culture at Valo?
Well, culture is incredibly important on so many different levels. First and foremost, we're working at the intersection of two fields, the technology field and drug discovery and development. These are fields that historically haven't taught to each other. So we've tried to create a culture where these two fields interact, they interact tightly, and they start to speak a common language, which requires us to evolve a common language. That being said, the other portion of culture is we're doing something that many deem unreasonable. And we've taken a step trying to do something very large, going after, if you will, the architecture of how drugs are discovered and developed. And what we require as part of our culture is a willingness to live in this unreasonable environment and say, yeah, we know that the field hasn't gone in this direction. We know that it's a big problem. We know it's hard, but we're not going to let that stop us. We're going to not just try to solve the problem, but excel and use the opportunities of every time we find a speed bump to figure out how we use that to accelerate towards our mission.
So that's resilience, it's non-traditional thinking, it's bravery. Do you instill that? Do you hire for that? Combination?
It has to be a combination. We have to live it, we have to own it, but we also have to look for the people who naturally live those values.
Last question, we're talking about bigger leaps as an important theme this week at JPM. If we're in these chairs 3-5 years from now, JPM 2028, what has Valo accomplished? What's it talking about in JPM 2028?
Well, what we're really trying to do at Valo is we want to create the underlying technology infrastructure that the entirety of the drug discovery and development industry can use to
the
make
intel inside.
You got it, you got it. And what we'd love to see is that our product offerings are being used by many across the industry, and that ultimately we've gone from a world where we've discovered and developed and approved, we as the industry, 1,400 drugs since the beginning of the FDA, but when we're looking at 13,000 diseases, I want to see that foundation laid where we can start saying, you know what, we have a drug for every disease.
Faster drugs for every disease. Valo, thanks so much for joining us, David, here in the studio.
Well, thank you. It's been great to be here.